held little mystery for the Egyptians of this era. What really troubled them was the security of the dead. The dead pharaohs would go to the Valley of the Kings in the west to become invisible underground and safe for eternity. The Valley of the Kings was dry and would preserve the body, and it would be protected and served by a small army of guards and priests who lived there. The tombs of the great are all but concealed in this valley. In fact, some are still to be found. The decorations echo those of Giza and Saqqara in their mystery and splendor. It was a cycle of life, death, and rebirth, carefully stage-managed by the priests, underpinned with symbols, incantations, and magic. A cycle they thought would last forever. In the year 1353 BC, the young pharaoh Amenhotep recited this poem to the sun. O God, who gives life, the sole God without another beside him, you create the earth according to your wish. You are in my heart. For a 21st century Christian, Jew, or Muslim, it's an orthodox prayer. For a 14th century BC Egyptian pharaoh, it was heresy. Amenhotep changed his vision from many gods to one. He changed his name to Akhenaten in honor of the one god Aten, and he revolutionized the art and architecture of Egypt. If the sun was God, then the temple didn't need a roof, so the supporting walls could be less massive. And what of art? Out went the stylized, perfectly proportioned, godlike figure of the pharaoh, and in came the pharaoh, warts and all, a man like any other. Egyptian art had discovered realism. Like Henry VIII, the reforming Tudor, Akhenaten confiscated the temple treasure. And when the powerful priests tried to combat him, he closed Karnak and Luxor and built a new capital for the new god. Akhenaten reigned just 17 years. Within days of his death, all traces of his god and name were obliterated. The priests of Amun had their revenge. Amun would be restored, but not for long. The Persian Empire swept across the desert and engulfed Egypt. The priests beseeched Amun for a savior. Oscar Wilde said, "When the gods wish to punish us, they answer our prayers." The savior the gods granted Egypt was a 33-year-old Greek, Alexander. He did push back the Persians, declared himself the son of Amun, and then left Egypt because he had other worlds to conquer. But he also left a Greek general on the throne, the first of the Ptolemy pharaohs. It was the end of the Egyptian dynasty. So what happened to Egypt's religion and its mighty gods? A small island here on the Nile holds the answer. Philae, high up in the Nile, was a place of pilgrimage from earliest times. But the art and architecture of Philae revealed the new reality. The mighty figure on the pylon is Greek. The Greek notion of space separates the buildings. Greek perspective skews the pillars. The last Egyptian hieroglyphic was written here on the 24th of August, 394 AD. An epitaph for the glory that had been. And there is this, the kiosk of Trajan. A new power was already stretching across the Mediterranean. The Romans were coming. Egyptian religion was founded on stability, but stability easily becomes rigidity. The Nile floods, the crops grow, the pharaohs die and live again. But then the world turned beneath their feet. The whole structure of Egypt, an inverted pyramid balanced on one man, the all-powerful pharaoh, toppled. Preservation and adaptation in religious belief as in archaeology go hand in hand. If the Egyptians had accepted that, perhaps Amun, Hathor, and Osiris might not be listed among the lost gods. When the Western world lay under a pall of ignorance and savagery, a people were coming to power in this land. A people who would raise up cities of marble and worship their many gods from the high places within them. Lovers of wisdom, their philosophers questioned the heavens and the earth, while their astronomers mapped the sky and their mathematicians measured the planet. They would produce art, sculpture, drama, and architecture so wondrous that the Romans would copy it, and a general, Alexander, who would win the greatest empire the world had ever known, champions of democracy and founders of the first European civilization. They were the Greeks. It is 2,000 years before the Christian era, Here, the Greek mainland is ravaged by barbarian invaders. Civilizations do not grow in shadow. To tell the story of the Greeks and their gods, I must go to where it all began. Egypt, Sumeria, and Mesopotamia were already ancient when the first advanced civilization in Europe flowered on the island of Crete. They were known as the Minoans. Perfectly positioned on the Mediterranean, they grew rich and powerful. The secret of their success lay hidden in the fold of mountains. Grain, timber, and olive oil traded for gold, ivory, and precious stones. But what of their gods? From earliest times, they worshipped the earth goddess, who blessed their fields with plenty. When a wave of immigrants brought a sky god from Southeast Asia, the Minoans married earth and sky. The union of heaven and earth would produce two families, the family of gods above, the family of mortals below. The gods gave form and meaning to the mysteries of the universe. The mortals offered worship in return. From this fusion of heaven and earth came religious art and architecture. And the jewel in the crown was Knossos. The palace of Knossos was a bustling hive of 1,500 rooms covering 2 hectares. It had workshops, kitchens, warehouses full of storage jars. It had terracotta plumbing and 2 stories of rooms and passages underground. Long-gone religious processions are recorded in the frescoes, painted on wet plaster. Monumental stone stairways connect the quarters of commoner and king. The center of power, the alabaster throne, remains, flanked by the benches of advisors, guarded by sedate griffins. In the Queen's chamber, dolphins frisk across the wall. But the most famous work of art in Knossos is the bull leapers. The bull was the sacred animal of the Minoans, the source and symbol of royal and divine power. And then it all came crashing down. In 1650 BC, the neighboring island of Terra, now Santorini, exploded, showering Crete with volcanic ash. 200 years later, Crete itself was rocked by an earthquake. Already, the religious beliefs, art and architecture of the Minoan civilization were ebbing to Greece and to glory. In the popular mind, the Greek family of gods expanded and fought among themselves. The infighting on high was reflected below. Mighty cities competing for power. What fused them together was a common enemy, the Persians. Cometh the hour, cometh the man. Persian crisis brought Pericles to power and welded the cities to a common cause. The Persians defeated, Athens reigned over Greece, and the Acropolis was its crown. It was the beginning of the Golden Age. Acropolis means high. High because high meant holy. Humanly, it was a refuge from attack, close to farms, but far from the sea and pirates. If, as legend held, the gods lived on Mount Olympus, then their images would be housed and worshipped here. But which god would be patron of Athens?
Typically, there was an argument. Poseidon, the sea god, created a saltwater spring for the citizens on the Acropolis, but Athena planted an olive tree and won their worship. This is its descendant, worshipped by Athenians for generations.
A consolation prize for Poseidon, the Erekteion, a masterpiece of Greek architecture and sculpture built in 420 BC. On the northern face, 6 columns in the Ionic style still stand, with scroll tops and pearl motifs on the abacus. On the southern face, something rare and imaginative. 6 caryatids, handmaidens of the goddess Artemis, support the porch.
When you're on a mission to craft something, logic means absolutely nothing compared to passion. You don't think about what makes sense. You just listen to your heart. You become haunted by a single question. How can I make this better? Join me on A Quest for Craft, a series with the Balvenie single malts.
Unlike Christian, Muslim, and Jewish temples, Greek temples were homes for the gods, rather than houses of worship. And this is the spectacular home of Athena, patron of Athens. The Parthenon dominates the Acropolis and seems to continue and complete the upward thrust of the hill. It was built in Pentelic marble in the Doric style and housed a vast statue of Athena. In fact, the gold and ivory statue cost more than the building. The Athenians did not forget the Persians. Plaques around the temple were carved with scenes symbolizing the triumph of good over evil, civilization over barbarism. Some have managed to survive over 2,500 years.
The Acropolis, the high city, would house the gods in splendor for all eternity. But what of the mortal men who built it?
The Keramaikos cemetery has been the last resting place for the great and good of Athens for over 2,000 years. Some tombs reflect the heroism of martyrs. Others, the grief of mourners. Still others hearken back to the powerful symbols of ancient times.
But the question remained, where did the dead go? Did they cross the river Styx in the underworld with Charon the ferryman to paradise, punishment, or what one writer called an eternity of boredom? According to legend, Zeus, the sky god, released two eagles in opposite directions. Wherever they met would be the center of the world. This is the spot in Delphi marked by the Omphalos, the navel stone.
Delphi, like the medieval Vatican, had immense power. Apollo's temple, the most famous of all Greek shrines, was terraced into the hillside. It had colonnades, meeting rooms, and a stadium. Because the god Apollo had killed the python, the monster serpent who had attacked his mother, the Pythian Games were held here in his honor every 4 years. It was a religious festival of athletic contests, music, and drama that rivaled the Olympics. But what of the afterlife? The Greeks found the afterlife so obscure, it sharpened their focus on this life. They hungered to know the future. This craving brought kings and commoners on pilgrimage to the navel of the world. Delphi and its priesthood flourished. Grateful pilgrims heaped it with offerings. Over 3,000 statues and treasuries lined the sacred way to express their gratitude. Only one treasury remains, the treasury of the Athenians, in thanksgiving for the victory at Marathon. Apollo was worshipped as the god of light, harmony, and order, and was possessed with the power of prophecy. Apollo himself answered all questions through his priestess, the oracle. She sat on a tripod stool over a volcanic vent in the floor and gave her answers in a gibberish that was interpreted by the priests. The oracle's answer would always be translated to the benefit of Delphi. Only Delphi could approve of new colonies, and did so at a price. It had a network of spies throughout the region, informing the priests who brokered power among the heads of state. And when the unified state was threatened by the Persians, the Greeks under Pericles, their great leader, came to ask a question.
And then the oracle got it wrong. Got it wrong. Wrong. The oracle got it wrong. Should we resist the Persians? The Greeks asked. No, answered the oracle, probably hoping Delphi would become the capital of Persian Greece. Pericles ignored the oracle. The Greek victory spelled defeat for Delphi.
From the 3rd century BC, Delphi declined as Greece expanded. Trireme ships sailing to the colonies carried Greek gods, art and architecture, and the ultimate question: What of the afterlife? Colonists are always tempted to reproduce the place they've left behind. Paestum in southern Italy could certainly qualify as Little Greece. The temple of Poseidon, the god of the sea, was built in 450 BC.
Where you from? You sexy thing, you.
Doric, the most popular architectural design in mainland Greece, is reproduced here in the thick, powerful columns with plain tops. A local contribution is the substitution of limestone for marble. Built nearby, and within 100 years of it, the basilica is also of ancient design, but unusual for having 9 columns on the short side and 14 on the long side. The main divinity of Paestum is Hera, the jealous wife of Zeus and the goddess of maternity and fertility. Other gods were faithfully reproduced in pottery and sculpture. The statue of Demeter, goddess of harvest and fertility, holds a bowl of fruit in her hands. An amphora shows Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, rising from the sea foam in a fine style and vivid colors. For the Greeks, Paestum was a home from home.
And then on June 3rd, 1968, the archaeologist Marco Napoli found something new and exciting.
At first glance, it was a tomb like any other, except that it held the oldest and best preserved example of Greek mural painting. Five travertine stone slabs covered with white stucco and painted with vivid scenes. The paintings are of a symposium, an after-dinner drinks party for men only. Typically, there was music and poetry and a game of kottabos, where the dregs of wine were tossed at a target. The scene seems to say more about the here and now than the hereafter, except for the painting of the dead young man on the lid of the tomb. He is known as the diver, a figure muscular, taut, and bronzed with reddish pigment, as idealized as any Greek sculpture. But some experts believe this is more than a work of art. They believe the platform symbolizes the pillars of Heracles, which marked the end of the known world, and the diver is diving into death, confident of reincarnation. Pythagoras, the philosopher, had already championed the idea of reincarnation in Greece. While the other pictures are almost a lament for the end of life and its joys, the diver seems to leap joyfully in the hope of an afterlife.
The ripple of the diver in Paestum was a mighty wave in Athens, because Athens had become the kingdom of the mind.
Plato promoted the idea of the highest virtue, shifting the focus from the god to the good. Aristarchus proclaimed the earth circled the sun. The plays of Sophocles questioned the justice of the gods. Aristotle and others placed reason over mystery. Camus once said, "Once a man begins to think, he begins to be undermined." But it was Mount Olympus of the gods that was dismantled, one myth at a time, by questions. Where do the Greek gods go? The high city, the home of the gods, knows their fate. The Acropolis and Greece fell to the Romans in 147 BC. And the gods? They changed their names to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, and departed the stage to Rome as spoils of war. The Acropolis, the high and holy place, would be overlooked, and new temples would rise to replace the old.
The Church of St. George was dedicated to the new Roman god, Jesus of Nazareth. And for the Greeks, Christianity would replace the Greek gods and answer the question of the afterlife.
The gods of Mount Olympus would be remembered forever in Greek art, architecture, sculpture, and drama, the living legacy of the lost gods. In the 8th century BC, when the Greek city-states were coming to power, a group of tribes occupied the hills above the Tiber in Italy. They were farmers, and their gods were the Numen. Faceless and formless spirits manifested in the powers of nature and the cycles of the seasons.